Imagine a place where throwing someone in a hole counts as justice, where polo has no rules, and where mountain peaks are believed to be infested with fairies. This isn't medieval times. This is British India in the 1920s.
That's such a fascinating period of transition. The way Lieutenant Colonel Gannon describes these remote regions, it's like stepping into another world entirely.
Well, what really strikes me is how he captures this collision between ancient and modern. You've got these tribal leaders who, as he says, could have walked straight out of the Old Testament, existing alongside British military outposts and colonial administrators.
The description of the Nawab of Dir is particularly haunting. Here's this powerful ruler being eaten away by leprosy, yet still trying to maintain his authority.
Hmm. You know what's really interesting about the Nawab? Despite his terrible condition, missing nose, ashen ears, dark glasses, hiding watery eyes, he had this incredible military history. The writer mentions he'd participated in 84 local wars before the disease took hold.
So, what was the political situation like in his court? It sounds incredibly complex.
Oh man, it was like something straight out of Game of Thrones. You've got this Prime Minister, Saftar Khan, who the writer compares to Judas Iscariot, manipulating everyone. The Nawab's suspicious of his sons. The sons are plotting against each other, and meanwhile, there's this bizarre three-way translation system needed just to communicate with visitors.
And let's not forget that terrifying justice system, the prison that's literally just a hole in the ground.
Right. And get this. If the Nawab was really angry, they'd just throw you in hoping you'd break your neck on the way down. If he was feeling merciful, they'd lower you down more carefully. But either way, you'd be sitting among the remains of previous prisoners. Like this was happening in the 20th century.
The cultural contrasts between different regions are fascinating too. The writer notes such a dramatic shift when they reach Chitral.
Exactly. In Dir, everyone's described as surly and morose, but Chitral is portrayed as this much more welcoming place, though, they had their own peculiarities, like the Metar with his 13 sons and 26 daughters. When asked about his mother, one son just casually mentions having many mothers.
Well, that brings us to those amazing descriptions of their polo matches. No rules, stone walls, spectators right on the edge of the field.
You know what's wild about those matches? They played with these weird polo sticks where the head was attached at an angle on a 40-foot wide field with a pipe band playing continuously. And when someone scored, they had to pick up the ball and throw it in the air for a massive whack while galloping.
The account of the Kafir people really caught my attention too. This ancient group that predated even the Buddhist presence in the region.
Yeah, and their practices were so unique. They'd leave their dead on hilltops with their best clothes, money, and food, and their religious dances, that moment where they explain their dancing in praise of God because they do not know how else to praise Him. It's just so pure and powerful.
Looking at this account now, a century later, what do you think it tells us about progress and modernization?
Well, that's what makes this whole account so relevant today. These regions are still grappling with many of the same issues. The tension between tradition and modernization, between local authority and central control. Like when the commander-in-chief wanted to sketch the Nawab's palace, the entire town was ordered to stay indoors. That kind of absolute personal power still exists in many parts of the world.
The way he describes crossing that dangerous mountain path is pretty telling too. Those ponies walking along the extreme edge, just feet from a 40-foot drop into the torrent below.
And speaking of mountains, I love how Tirek Mir, this massive 25,700-foot peak, was believed to be infested with fairies. It's these little details that show how supernatural beliefs existed right alongside practical concerns about survival and power.
It really does feel like a window into a world that was already vanishing, even as it was being documented.
You know what's really striking? The way these societies handled everything on such a personal level, like how disputes over women were often settled by simply paying the husband the equivalent of a cow's price, or how revenge killings for adultery were perfectly acceptable, but other murders might be punished. It really shows how different their concept of justice was from what we understand today.